so I can hit you!
Tyrants of the Moonsea is a third part in a loosely tied together trilogy that begins with Siege of Shadowdale, continues with Crimson Tides of Tithir. I've covered these with previous reviews and I'll leave a link down below for easy access. But what is Tyrants of the Moonsea? And more importantly, is it worth playing? Let's go ahead and find out. Originally planned to be a premium module release for the OG Neverwinter Nights, it never saw the light of day as Atari pulled the plug on it. However, it was released to the public for free and has been playable for many years, but with the release of the Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition, Oshawan Studios got the call to make it official as a premium module again. They took up the helm from Luke Skull's work and added more content, music, and assets to really try and finish fleshing out a really good mod already. A high-level campaign, the player character begins at 15 and should end around 20 to 22 with about 20 hours of content. There is some puzzles that can be kind of elaborate and rely on the player's own intuition to figure them out or stumble upon the answer. I'll talk a little bit about that later. Roleplay, or more strictly speaking, alignment choices and interactions do play a factor in this mod, but overall I'd say it's really just a hack and slasher. Loot drops are plentiful and gold is abundant throughout the entire playthrough. But before we dive too far down this rabbit hole, remember to like and subscribe for more future content. Let's go ahead and dive in. The opening to Tyrants of the Moonsea has us as a caravan guard. As a hero of some renown, why we've decided to do caravan duty isn't really talked about. I guess when you're paid handsomely for seemingly a mundane task, just go ahead and roll with it. Whatever the case, one thing is a fact, we don't ask too many questions about it, and it leads us into the middle of a clash of some bad baddies. That of a strange cult and the local cronies tied to the hierarchy between Hillsfire and Zhentil Keep. There are followers that we can pick up along the way, my favorite being a rogue undead character who also has a really interesting side quest. It all comes down to exploring all the nooks and crannies available in the module itself that you actually will even stumble upon this. That is the interesting thing about Tyrants of the Moonsea. There isn't a lot of hand-holding on the quest. Also, the order that you do them in. While the beginning is pretty well streamlined and linear, it eventually opens up to the entire Moonsea area where you can transverse back and forth. While the puzzles are interesting and sometimes very obscure, slight spoiler, please don't ignore the books, some of them contain information to complete puzzles where no quest index or dialogue tree will be given mention to this. In a way, Tyrants of the Moonsea has a lot of Easter eggs, especially if you really like to dig into that Forgotten Realm lore. There are a ton of my favorite locations of this one. Hillsfire and Zhentil Keep coming to mind first and foremost. Hell, even being able to travel by boat across the Moonsea filled some wild ode I never knew existed. I think it's because I remember playing those strategic stimulation games as a young kid, and some of those locations just harken back to so many memories of that old school PC games. Fanboying aside, the module itself offers a really good main storyline arc. One thing I've noticed about Luke Skull's work is that he isn't afraid to throw a narrative curveball at you, and Tyrants of the Moonsea delivers on this as well. The side quests are interesting footnotes, each one of them with its own little style. You may be dragging a gambling husband back to his house for his wife late at night, or saving a kid's dad from imprisonment. Either way, the side quests can quickly fill up that XP bar, which leads to progression. The XP rates in Tyrants of the Moonsea a little lopsided. Slaying monsters, and I mean the big old baddies, will only land you a small percentage of XP. So grinding is really out of the question for quick leveling. It all comes down to completion of the quest. Also, it's recommended not to carry over your character from Crimson Tides, but I did. Mainly because I wasn't making a very super OP character to begin with. While some of the fights did seem on the easy side, bosses, however, were a different matter. Even fights involving you to enchant a weapon a certain way to damage the foe. My favorite being one particular battle where a standard weapon was the only option for damage. I sat there hacking at this creature for over an hour trying to figure out how to damage it. I'd be lying to say if I didn't cheat and look it up on the forums in frustration. But that's also what makes Tyrants of the Moonsea particularly interesting, and expands upon it doing just more than just a module to play. The tile sets also were breathtaking, if not a little bit sparse. I don't mean in the sense of the NPCs. Hell, there's a section so flooded with tile sets and NPCs that it actually caused a slowdown on the PC that should run the Enhanced Edition with 5 copies going at once no problem. Barring frame rate problems, which also could have been chalked up to the using of the recently upgraded Beamdog HD texture packs, a lot of the cities would have doors that couldn't be opened or explored, leaving exploration to be bare bones in these locales. There were a couple of instances of random encounters that were interesting, like where I barged into a family home, apologized, gave them some of my gold for being rude, and then I left. But for the most part, I really wish there was just that basic homestead that you could go around and pillage in, and I didn't really find a lot of that in this playthrough. I also like the fact that you could do inventory control over the NPCs. A lot of the modules skip on this, and I always find it more engaging being able to swap the gear or the character I'm controlling. Another feature was the map set. I mentioned the questing a little earlier, and one thing of note is that it had a little bit of a lack of direction. While I'm all for the map opening up for exploration, it also invites disaster, as you may stumble upon an NPC for a quest of an NPC you've already spoken to, and we'll have to backtrack to an older location and encounter them again, and it just gets really confusing. While not a major sticking point, this does slow down the narrative of the main story and forces the player to just click location to location, run to said location, and run back. It's almost like padding. Now, like I said, this only happened to me a couple of times, but I could see someone getting lost in the shuffle if they didn't streamline the map locations like I did. Another big sticking point is the selling of equipment. The vendors quickly run out of cash, meaning more times than not, I was sitting on some goodies I just simply couldn't sell. Not to mention some of the vendors have a hard cap on what they would offer, so you might have something that is worth 30k, but you can only sell it for 5k, so you're going to lose some dough. That's not to say that there wasn't enough gold to buy whatever you needed. The game provides plenty of loot drops and plenty of gold to be had. I just found it a little bit frustrating that unless you decided to buy a bunch of potions and scrolls for gold swapping the merchant, you really have some full bags in this playthrough. So when it says not to transfer over a character from Crimson Tides, I can tell you that I kind of disagree because of the bag of holdings I had. Other than those little things of note, Tyrants of the Moonsea is a pure delight to play. There's a ton of cutscenes, voiceover, and stellar storyline drama going on to fill up anyone's palate of high fantasy. As with other premium modules, there's also a musical score strictly created for Tyrants of the Moonsea, so here's a little bit of a shortcut of that. Let's wrap this up. So, Tyrants of the Moonsea, a once cancelled premium module, now with a fresh coat of paint and extended content, is a surefire way to blow through your next 20 hours with some great entertainment. While I still rate Crimson Tides as the best in the storyline department, Tyrants doesn't let down with narrative punches left and right to really help the player invest in the storyline and the world, with historical characters and locations that really grab the atmosphere of those places. I can't think of many better additions to the module library of Neverwinter Nights, and with that being said, I would go ahead and give Tyrants of the Moonsea a play. Well, that's it for this one. I'm going to go ahead and call it a wrap. Have a great day gaming. Later.